know that if you've got any questions, you can submit them through the live chat room, or you can call in on toll-free 1-888-919-2355. That's toll-free 1-888-919-2355. And if we do get any questions, Gary, we can break to those. But if not, I just wanted to sort of push on a little bit and sort of backtrack to your police work, or police sightings, I should say. And I wondered if during the course of your research, you'd ever come across any rumours about crash reports involving the police, things like that?
No. The quick answer to that is, I believe there's been a couple of little snippets, but they've never led anywhere. There was one in South Yorkshire that I heard about near Doncaster, but that really didn't go anywhere. It's just a little bit of a story. And then I believe, and you're more familiar with this, the Cannock Chase one. Yeah, so which you reported in your book. So I mean, other than that, the answer is no. Most of what people are seeing, they see all manner. For example, one of the cases that I quoted at the Citizens' hearing was from a PC Robin Perry, and I think he's a Metropolitan officer. And basically, he was on patrol in the mid-80s with his colleague in the marked police car, when they suddenly saw what they could only describe was a huge triangular craft at low altitude. And I mean by low altitude, we're talking about 300 or 400 feet. He said it was the size of 3 football fields. And I said to him, the size of 3 football fields? How do you know that? And he went, well, it was over 3 football fields when we saw it. And I thought, well, that's pretty good. So, pretty accurate. Now, why is that officer going to make this up? What's he going to gain? Is he going to become famous? Does he risk ridicule? And he's given his name out publicly. Now, it was corroborated by his colleague. So, why? What's his motivation? He's not going to make money. If anything, he just risks ridicule. So, for me, once I checked him out, he's a very credible source, multiple officer source. Another one in North Yorkshire. These are fairly recent cases. Again, this is in the late 80s. Two is now a retired officer, but this guy was called John Pank. And basically, he was protecting a former, at the time, he was a very senior Conservative cabinet minister. So, somebody very eminent and well known. I've never released his name, but it will be in the book if I ever get a chance to write it. But basically, they were guarding him, he and a colleague, on close protection, i.e. weapons. They were firearms experts. And he'd stopped in North Yorkshire overnight in a rural location, just overnight en route somewhere else up north. And basically, it was one of those lovely mornings where at sort of 5 in the morning, the sun's up, there's not a cloud in the sky, lovely bright summer's morning, and the two officers who've been up protecting this location in the middle of nowhere are walking around in the grounds of the house, when suddenly the sky goes dark and they look up, and they're a bit shocked to see that there is a huge cylindrical object hovering above the house, which is a bit of a shock. To the point where one of them began to draw his weapon, and his mate said, well, what are you going to do to that? And it was kind of a bit of a joke, but they were in awe. But there was a huge cylindrical object, they said the length of a football field, hovering motionless, no noise, over the house. And they watched it in awe for 5 minutes, and then suddenly it shot off at incredible speed out towards the horizon, stopped sharply for a few seconds, then shot off again in the blink of an eye. Now, again, two officers corroborating each other. What motivation is there for them to lie? And I think the answer is none. They're either just telling you incredible stories. But then there's a serving officer in the British Transport Police. I won't give her name out because she's a serving officer. But she told me, and this is a sighting in, I think, January of 2012. I think it's actually the most recent sighting I've got. And basically, she is driving a marked car. She's on her own, and it's daylight. And she sees, I think from her left, that she's going along a rural road what she thinks is a plane just flying very low. But then it's not a plane, it's a sphere, egg-shaped sphere. And basically, this sphere stops in the middle of the road as she's approaching. So she has to slow down, and then suddenly it shoots up into the sky vertically. Well, again, I can't think of anything that we've got, stealth or otherwise, that can do that. You know, and I knew this girl personally, and she's a very credible officer, so I've no doubt what she was telling me was true. Those kind of stories come out, and 70% of the cases on the database are multiple officer. I'm not a big lover of statistics because they can be manipulated. I've seen that with all statistics, and especially the police manipulate statistics, who doesn't? But I don't like that. But basically, the one statistic that stands out from the database is that it's about 70% of the cases are multiple officer. That means out of 425 cases, that's over 300 cases are multiple officer. Now, that's a lot harder for the skeptics to deal with. And I always come at this subject from an evidential point of view. You know, so I don't mind skepticism at all, providing it's accurate and it's relevant. Unfortunately, what you have, and especially the way the media works, is that because the people who make the documentaries really don't have a clue about UFOs, they go into it blind, they don't know good from bad, and they end up, because they're so ill-informed, that they think, well, to help us out, really, we'll have a skeptic talking and we'll have an expert talking. Well, when you do cookery, do you have a non-cook there? When you have a furniture expert, do you have a non-furniture expert there? No, you don't. But when it comes to UFOs, because they don't have a clue, they have got to have a skeptic there. And if what they say match the testimony of the people reporting the event, matched, and it was a credible point, then fair point. But when it comes on TV, it never does. Well, it's just got to be a star. It's got to be it's got to be a bit of space debris coming back. Yeah, but it was 3 hours earlier. No, but it's got to be that. It's got to be a flying lighthouse, from all directions. Doctor Who couldn't write it better than a flying lighthouse with Rendlesham. But in every documentary over the last 35 years, this has had a major portion of the show, which is a disgrace because it should have got kicked into touch in the first 2 minutes because it wasn't credible. The people who were there knew that there was a lighthouse there. And I've been out there at midnight and filmed it, and guess what it does? It shines a beam every 5 seconds. Every 5 seconds. Every 5 seconds. So even if you were confused, it wouldn't take you more than 15 or 20 seconds to go, that's a lighthouse. Are you with me? And that's what's not shown in TV. So clever editing can make anything look silly, and I kind of want to engage with the media, and I'm trying to actively write picture to TV executives now to write and present a TV series showing the best evidence, looking at the best cases, that 3% unknown cases, through my evidential eyes and pointing out what is the best evidence. Because I really do think the evidence is there on a circumstantial evidence basis to say that ET is here. But unfortunately, until somebody pulls the finger out in the media, it's not going to happen because there is this media bias. But I do think we are quite close to having a bit of a game changer in the sense that I've talked to a number of journalists over the last year or so, and I think the story that's ready to come out in the next year or two, if not sooner, is the fact that they've found microscopic bacterial life on Mars. And once that happens, it doesn't matter what it is, it's life, and it's answered that question. Is there life outside, out there? And the answer is yes. And if that comes out, then I would say that's the first brick coming out of the dam in the disclosure process, because the water will start leaking then, because as soon as two little planets going around a little insignificant star like us, we've got over 1,000 exoplanets already discovered by the likes of Kepler, etc. So we're basically saying any star now has probably got 8 to 10 planets around them. Now, if we've got life confirmed in any kind of format on Mars, then that means 2 out of the 9 for us. Well, you just extrapolate the figures in our Milky Way, you can't even get your head around the numbers, and it would probably mean that for every star, the trillions and trillions and trillions of stars, there's 8 to 10 planets, of which some will be in the Goldilocks zone, the so-called not too hot, not too cold zone, like the Earth, and basically may well support life. Now, the argument then for distances completely goes out the window. It's untenable, because what happens if a civilization developed ahead of Earth time by 500 years, 1,000 years? What if it's 500,000 years ahead of us? Do you think they'll still be driving around in petrol-driven cars? Or do you think they'll be driving around in jet engines in the aircraft? I don't think so. Look at where we've gone just in the last 1,000 years. You can't believe the leap just in the last 100 years since the Wright brothers, 1903, and look, here we are now going to the far edges of our solar system and beyond. You can't comprehend. So I think all that's happening. I mean, I often use this example that if you went to Leonardo da Vinci, who was arguably the greatest mind of a 500-year generation, and passed him an iPad and said, work that one out, Leonardo, he wouldn't have a clue, because the leap in technology is too much. Now, what happens if UFOs have developed 1,000 years ahead of Earth time? Well, if we compare that with Earth technology, where are we going to be? Where's mankind's technology going to be in terms of propulsion systems in 100 years, 500 years? We ain't going to be driving around in cars. We aren't going to be using jet engines. We would have developed new methods faster and faster. And what did it do? It used to take weeks and weeks to travel the seas, and now we can do it in hours, literally. It used to fly around the Earth. The Blackbird in the 50s and 60s could go around the Earth in 3 hours. That was technology then. So the world will shrink, and in space will shrink as technologies evolve. But, if a civilization's developed technology ahead of us, well, why can't they just have worked out better methods of propulsion? Yeah. It really is a nonsensical, very narrow-minded, astronomical argument that really doesn't work for me at all.
Okay. And something that just occurred to me out of the blue, I didn't plan this question, but bearing in mind, the fact that you focus so much on the police, I just wondered, do you get reports also from other aspects of emergency services, like the fire brigade and ambulance drivers, that sort of thing?
I've had the occasional one, but the answer is, realistically speaking, no. I've had the odd one, but I've had I've had reporters, I've had architects, I've had doctors, accountants and people like that, and they will say, I can't go public with this because I'll lose my business. And isn't that a terrible indictment of society, that these very credible people who would normally be looked at as leading citizens in their communities are suddenly, because of this subject and because of the way that the media has treated it over the last 60 years, they're almost demonized for having been involved in something that was beyond their control, that they probably don't understand. And I've had police officers almost crying on the phone when I spoke to them the first time, because they've been able to unload something that happened 20 years previously, but they've never been able to tell the wife or the girlfriend or their family. And suddenly they've got somebody who's not going to ridicule them, somebody who is going to listen sympathetically, and they found it very moving. And it's almost been like a cathartic counselling kind of session. And I think it's a terrible indictment, the way that the media has treated people in this subject, because how can you trivialise a military pilot being sent up like Milton Torres in 1957 to over Ipswich in Suffolk, funnily enough near Endlesham, but to fly his plane, and he gets told, flying his Super Sabre, an American pilot over Britain, is told to fire his 24 rockets at a radar confirmation